News.
Okay, we'll start with this, a look at Carolyn Dubois' upcoming title defense. Since having become unified lightweight champion after beating Terry Harper, she's set to face America's own Amelia Moore in a fight that I'm not crazy about. On the upcoming UK versus USA MVP show in August, I think that there are other fighters out there more capable of giving Carolyn Dubois a stiff test and a good fight for what is a co-main event. Amelia Moore is wildly unprepared for a fight with Carolyn Dubois, who sports a professional record of 13 wins with no losses and 1 draw, 5 knockouts, unified lightweight champion, to Amelia Moore, who comes from a solid amateur background, though as a professional, she's still a greenhorn, sporting a record of 4 wins with no losses and no draws, only 1 recorded knockout. 36 years old. 13 years older than the defending champion, so there is a sort of do-or-die attitude to this decision to take on somebody like Carolyn Dubois without adequate preparation in the build-up. Last in action in March of this year opposite the ring, Bonnie Hunter, who's a far cry from what she will face in Carolyn Dubois. This is a dramatic step up in competition that likely won't work out for the unbeaten up-and-comer. Though being 36 years old and getting off to such a late start in what is her professional boxing career, that is where that do-or-die attitude comes from, that Amelia Moore doesn't have the luxury of time.
Not at 36.
She doesn't have a heap of good years left to give to the sport of boxing, so whatever she aspires to do, she has to do it at an accelerated rate. She has to do it quickly. Having had a look at her, she's got very good physical dimensions for a lightweight. She's got some height, some length, works off the jab okay, but her defense could stand to be a little bit better. Stepping into her lead, bringing other punches over, stringing together combinations and applying pressure. She places her punches all right, but of course, at only 4-0, there's gonna be more work needs doing. Decent power. But I think it would have made a lot more sense for, say, Stephanie Hahn to defend her title against Amelia than for Carolyn Dubois to defend her title against Amelia. I think in terms of professional experience, Amelia's closer to Stephanie than she is to Carolyn. Carolyn is going to beat her. It's just a question of how. Does she win a decision, or does she push the pace and force a stoppage? It's not even because Amelia Moore isn't any good. She's definitely got something, and you can see that. But at only 4-0, this is too big a step up in competition too fast. I think it would have made more sense to put Carolyn in there with, say, Christina Linardatu, former 2-time WBO champion at 140 pounds who hasn't retired yet, given that Carolyn has been spending a lot of time calling out Alicia Baumgartner. You could have used Linardatu to build up the fight between them on the premise that Christina would service as a common opponent, the whole who did it better conversation. For the unified lightweight champion, I think it would have made more sense to get her somebody more seasoned, a former champion, than an unbeaten up-and-comer with only 4 fights. And for what is a co-main event, they could have found somebody better for her. I anticipate Carolyn is going to be too much for Amelia in August.
You're exploiting my grandfather's name. Yeah. You're putting his name on an act against something that he would have fought against. So it's not something I'm happy with, and just spreading the knowledge on it kind of helps, because most fighters have no idea what the Ali Act is or what the Revival Act is. I'm not someone who's big into politics. This is my first time even speaking on matters like this, and the reason that I'm doing it obviously is it's because it's my name. It's affecting me. It's affecting my legacy. It's affecting me as a fighter, and they're using my grandfather's name to benefit themselves when they're not benefiting the fighters, which was my grandfather's whole point to begin with. That was the reason that the Ali Act was put into place. But of course, there's a middle ground that we can meet that would be perfect for the fighters. I just don't know if they would be willing to meet in that middle ground because of the meetings that we are having almost every single day with these senators, and how shocked they are to see how the Revival Act and how the Ali Act is affecting the current state of boxing today. The fact that they're so shocked, I'm absolutely certain that some changes are going to be made. If not, the Revival Act will not be made into law at all.
Nico Ali Walsh talks about the exploitation of his late great-grandfather's last name, but I feel like in some ways he's exploiting it because, let's be honest, He doesn't measure up in any way, shape, or form to the fighter that his grandfather was. That much we all know. But that's been the biggest part of the marketing strategy to sell Nico Ali Walsh as a fighter. And when fighting didn't work, now he's using it for activism. So is it possible that being the grandson of Muhammad Ali, he could exploit his name? I think it is, because that's what it is to be a Nepo baby. Born into privilege that others may not be born into wealth that everybody doesn't come by. There are so many fighters better than a Nico Ali Walsh that should have been boxing on a major platform like ESPN. The only reason that he did is because of who his grandfather is, not because of his amateur background and not because he's so good a fighter, so exciting, but for no other reason than his lineage. I could think of a lot of fighters I would have preferred to see on ESPN than Nico Ali Walsh, constantly being reminded of who his grandfather is. I can think of a lot of female fighters, some of which have already accomplished more in the sport than he has. So what is that if not exploitative? Getting ahead, not based on your own ability and what you can do, but because of what your grandfather did. Some people might call that exploitative. I'm some people. So Nico Ali Walsh's boxing career didn't take off like his late great-grandfather's did. Now he's got plenty of time to play the activist, fighting for the fighters, except that it's the fighters themselves that are migrating over to Zuffa. I remember after the initial Senate hearing, Nico Ali Walsh was asked, have fighters started coming to him about the Revival Act and what it's all about, what it means? Nico said no. The only two people there representing boxing were Nico Ali Walsh and Oscar De La Hoya with what was tantamount to a book report, some crumpled up pieces of paper for a long-winded speech.
That was it.
That was all. Now ask yourself, if this is all supposed to be so consequential, detrimental to the fighters themselves, then why weren't more of them there? Where were the sanctioning bodies? Where were their presidents? Were they busy that day? When you look past the fear-mongering of a few, don't you think that if this were as bad as it's being made out to be, and Zuffa were against the fighters like they say, more of the fighters would have stood up against them? But what you see is the opposite. What you see is the fighters are signing to Zuffa, some of which are now making more money than they were making before.
According to Robert Garcia.
I thought the hang-up was that Dana White is going to bring that UFC structure over to boxing, and when he does, the fighters are going to get jerked. The fighters are going to get screwed. What we're hearing about the fighters fighting at Zuffa is a good number of them are making more money than they were making before. No camp fees.
Because they're training at the UFC Apex.
It's one less business expense for them, where normally a portion of their purse would have to go to camp fees, not anymore. So they see more of their own money.
Nico Ali Walsh claims that a lot of the fighters, they don't even really understand what the Ali Act is or the Revival Act. But I don't think he knows what it is either.
I think that he only recently came into this knowledge, what the Ali Act is supposed to do.
And where the Revival Act is a little bit different.
But what I think is going to fall on deaf ears with the senators is that nobody is forced to sign to a unified boxing organization. That's really the main difference with the Revival Act and the existing Ali Act. The Revival Act allows for the formation of a UBO, a league unto itself, with its own ranks and its own belt, its own governance.
There's other stuff in the Revival Act, but the main thing that's been making headlines is that under the Revival Act, you could form a league of your own, provided you meet certain requisites, tick off on certain boxes. That's the main thing. When you hear people talking about a monopoly, the exploitation of fighters, that's what they're describing.
The potential for that to happen under a league structure, not otherwise seen in the sport of boxing.
So bad about that?
Nothing really, because nowhere in the Revival Act does it say that licensed boxers in the United States have to sign to a UBO. They don't. They have a choice, and what you notice is many of them are choosing to sign to Zuffa, in spite of the mudslinging, in spite of the slander, and the libel.
In spite of them trying to use Dana White's reputation at the UFC to discourage fighters from signing to Zuffa, fighters are still signing to Zuffa. American fighters, even British fighters.
The Muhammad Ali Act isn't even a thing over there in Britain, in case you forgot. It's why, in spite of the fear-mongering of a few, this isn't what they're making it out to be. What this really is fear of competition. The existing game in town see a well-financed organization run by a lot of well-to-do individuals with a lot of money behind it, and they're afraid these guys are going to make their jobs that much harder. It's going to make it harder for them to hang on to their fighters, because what if this new organization can offer them more money? That's what it was upon the inception of the PBC. That's why Goldenboy and Top Rank weren't happy with them. That's what it was with the inception of DAZN and their debut in the United States. That's why all these other guys were going after them. That's why they're now going after Zuffa. They want to discourage fighters from going over there because they're afraid Zuffa can provide them with more money than they can. And they don't want to overpay. But to hang on to their fighters, they might have to. They're going to have to come up with something because Zuffa's got deep pockets. And that's all it really is.
That's what Nico's worried about?
With Nico, it is a little bit different. He really believes that he's fighting the good fight, all of which comes from naivety.
Thinks he's the one that's gonna save boxing because of my granddaddy.
With Nico, and I've said this before, because of who his grandfather is, he's been spared a lot of the more dubious business practices commonplace in the sport. He's a Nepo baby.
He's privileged.
This guy is not some standout amateur, some bronze, silver, or gold medalist, not an Olympian, fast-tracked to a major promotional deal with a major promotional outfit, fighting on a major network for no other reason than who his grandfather is.
He doesn't understand that the Muhammad Ali Act in America is little more than a guideline that nobody really enforces, and the powers that be within the sport, they've been working around it for years. So where you think that it's this force field that's protecting all the fighters,
It's more of a stop sign.
it's more of a stop sign in a residential neighborhood, and, you can probably blow through it if nobody's around.
You don't want to be too cavalier too often unless you run into a pedestrian, but that's the best parallel for what the Muhammad Ali Act has been.
There have been a lot of people blowing through that stop sign.
I'd wager that me and you know a lot more about the nefarious business practices within the sport in spite of the Ali Act than Nico Ali Walsh does.
Fighters that got fucked over, who fucked them over, why, when.
How much time have you seen Nico Ali Walsh spent on that? Or is he under the impression that everything's been all sunshine and rainbows up until Dana White came into the boxing space? Naivety!
That's all it really is on his part. Naivety. The established game in town are against Zuffa because they're afraid Zuffa is gonna make their jobs harder. But with Nico, it's just naivety. With him, he's just misguided and looking for a cause to fight for.
Speaking of fights, Goldenboy has issued a cease and desist letter to Zuffa, Paramount alleging Ryan Garcia interference. Oscar De La Hoya and Goldenboy Promotions are sending a cease and desist letter to Dana White's Zuffa Boxing TKO Group Holdings, Paramount and Saudi Arabia's seller, to immediately halt alleged interference with WBC welterweight champion Brian Garcia. Sources familiar with the situation told Boxing Scene on Wednesday, a day after telling reporters he's open to negotiating with all major promoters, including Dana White, and his first-year promotion. De La Hoya was said to be blindsided upon learning that Zuffa Boxing was poised to announce on Sunday's UFC 328 event from the White House on Paramount Plus that Garcia, 25-2, would make his first title defense against Zuffa fighter and number one contender Conor Benn of England.
Blindsided. How the fuck could he be blindsided? This fight has been rumored to be happening for weeks now, and World Boxing Council President Mauricio Suleiman all but confirmed it last week. For weeks, it's been rumored to occur on September 12th in Las Vegas. De La Hoya attorney Ricardo Pisestero of LA-based law firm Greenberg Glusker alleges in the letter that also names Garcia advisor Guadalupe Valencia that Goldenboy has not participated in any financial dealings or related negotiations they are obligated to participate in, along with Garcia's King Ryan Promotions. Garcia, the letter states, is obligated to have his fights on Goldenboy's streaming partner, DAZN, and not Paramount Plus. Paramount? Is that where they want to do it? I thought they were gonna do it on Netflix.
Goldenboy has not approved or agreed to the terms of any such Benn bout, nor has Goldenboy been involved in the negotiations of any such bout, Sestero writes. In the letter reviewed by Boxing Scene accordingly, Goldenboy hereby demands that you immediately cease and desist from any negotiations or discussions.
Ryan Garcia's been trying to do his own thing, march to the beat of his own drum at Goldenboy for years now. They never seem to see eye to eye.
Having that mutual say is a critical element of Goldenboy's long-standing relationship in promoting Southern California's Garcia to a third title shot in February that resulted in a UD win over Mario Barrios at a news conference Tuesday. De La Hoya told Boxing Scene, "There's no update on Garcia, Ben. I'm hearing rumblings and rumors. Nobody's talked to me. We obviously have the final say because I am Ryan's promoter. This is one thing I can tell you. We will work with every promoter, even if it has to be Dana White and Zuffa."
Yeah, he says that shit, then he turns around and does this.
White, the UFC CEO president, is a constant punching bag of De La Hoya's on his Clapback Thursday social media posts. As much as I hate it, let's go. Why not? Because the fighters want this fight, Ryan wants it, you have to work with the promoters to make these fights happen, De La Hoya said. If that's what Ryan wants, that's what he's going to get. It's a matter of details.
Yeah, he says that shit, then he turns around and does this.
A matter that all parties are happy. Ultimately, there has to be a conversation, whether they like it or not. We're going to be on stage together, maybe a few feet away. Maybe the news conference will be more interesting than the fight, because of me and Dana White going at it. I'm ready, you know me. Earlier this week in England, boxer promoter Ben Shalom told reporters, Zuffa Boxing is engaged in scandalous conduct by allegedly poaching his fighters, including former cruiserweight champion Chris Smith. We have to protect our business because it's dangerous and damages aren't appropriate, Shalom told Boxing Scene. We need to stop them from being able to take our fighters and staff.
What did I tell you? This thing with Zuffa and everybody else, it's about everybody else being worried that Zuffa's gonna come in, make their jobs harder, and steal their fighters.
Brian Garcia, earlier today, seemingly responding to Oscar's cease and desist letter, stated, "I'm whooping Conor Ben like he stole something. Don't let the headlines fool you." To which Conor responded, "I'm about to steal your title, and there's nothing you can do about it. But what about Oscar?"
What about the lawyers? Is there something they can do about it? I remember when Ryan Garcia scheduled himself a crossover fight over there in Japan. I think it was at the end of the previous year or the one before that. And he wasn't able to go through with it. He wasn't able to go through with it because he didn't involve Goldenboy Promotions. In the end, the whole thing got scrapped.
They said it was because Ryan Garcia suffered some kind of injury, so he wasn't able to fight, but we all know what it was. It's that then, like now, Ryan thought he could go out there, do his own thing, and not involve Oscar.
So it is a little hard to imagine how they're going to get this fight over the line without Oscar De La Hoya's blessing and Goldenboy's involvement. However, I still think it's the smartest thing for Oscar to do to let Ryan go through with the fight. Put your feelings against Dana White aside and realize this is an easy lick for Ryan Garcia. He stands to make a lot of money and you get a cut. You get a piece of that action at no expense to you. Goldenboy doesn't have to promote the fight. Goldenboy doesn't have to do anything.
Zuffa's footing the bill, so let them pay to get their own guy beat, because that's what's going to happen. Connor's going to be drained, Ryan knocks him out, you get a cut for having to do nothing.
What better way to stick it to Dana White than having your flagship fighter beat his flagship fighter? Common sense!